Welcome to the 100X Life podcast, where we activate people who desire to live the words of Jesus and experience the abundant life he promises. I'm your host, Rob Dayton, and I hope this podcast inspires you to put in the work of following Jesus.
Now the Spirit of the Lord is upon me, to bind up the brokenhearted and set the captives free.
Hey, 100X Life, welcome back to the podcast. You're at the podcast because you are in the challenge, or maybe you're not in the challenge. You just picked up 100X Life and you went to 100xlife.com and found the podcast, and now you're just wanting to be encouraged. We're on Word of Jesus number 23, Don't Divorce. If you're in the challenge, we are on day 29 and ever so close to the middle of the challenge, where we're going to be on the downslope soon. So be encouraged. Pretty awesome. And then for this particular word, I have Brandon Schmiedeberg again in the house. And I think it's really cool, Brandon, that you're taking this one on, because you got some real stuff. There's some real stuff going on in your marriage. And then we want to make sure that, there might be some people who aren't married. We want to make sure that we talk to them about how this word of Jesus would impact them. And then just full disclosure, and if you read the book, you already know this, but I got a divorce. I got a divorce at 22 or 23. And my life was a complete train wreck. And, I've been forgiven from that woman, which is amazing. But it's real. And I gotta say that for me, forgiving men who decide to get a divorce is a big challenge for me, because this is my issue. This is the issue I failed in. This is the issue that I did not overcome in. And of course I've overcome in my current marriage, but yeah, it's kind of like it can be a black mark. And so two things. It can be embarrassing. I wish my track record was perfect from I was a kid. And then second thing is, it really is hard to let it go when a man that I'm working with, my whole jam, as you know, is transforming the life of men. And so when someone just goes there's just nothing to be done after divorce, and we'll get into it. But man, that is a very challenging moment for me. And you've not been divorced, right, Brandon?
I've not been divorced. I have been married to my wife, Kelsey, for 9.5 years. We've got our 10-year in September, which, we're looking to do something to celebrate that, because it's a milestone. It's great. And yeah, we do have 2 kids, 5 and almost 4, and they're awesome. And
little girls.
2 girls. Yeah, they're beautiful. They're full of energy, super creative. They get a lot of that from their mom. And no, I love her. And like you said, we are working through some stuff right now. We're actually in a marriage course that is helping us see, how to love each other. And we're diving into some topics that are a little heavy, Just this last week, we've been focusing on our brokenness, individual brokenness, and how we're taking some of that and kind of portraying it or putting that on our spouses. So there's been a lot of self-reflection in what is my cause for why we're not living the best marriage that we can. And so, I feel initially I felt a little under informed to be able to talk about this subject of divorce. But I also know that I'm, just like so many other guys and gals in marriages right now where things aren't perfect. Nothing's ever perfect, but the ideal marriage, quote unquote, that you might have might not be what you're living out. And so I think it's okay to be able to bring some real perspective into, trying to avoid heading into divorce.
Yeah. And thank you for being open about that. I think that that's really important and also makes this extremely relevant right now. And, I know that you've been investing in Kelsey, and that's been really cool to see, doing Dream Master, taking her away, investing in counseling. And so you're pursuing her, you're pursuing investment in her, you're pursuing, how do we make this right? How do we get along? And I got to just say, like, as someone who's now been around the block a bit, and married for 27 years, that, opposites do attract. And then, so when we're together and we're so opposite, a lot of times what happens is we just don't understand each other. And the things that drive us crazy about each other are actually opportunities, but we don't see that. What we see is somebody who is just like, what the heck did you just do? Like, or what did you not do? And, I'm thinking, and this is probably on a previous podcast, but I'm thinking, like, with Nancy, one of the early things in marriage is her inability to close any cabinet, door, just left everything open. And I was like, man, who did I marry? This woman who can't just close a cabinet. I'm in the bathroom. There's the medicine cabinet on her side, open again. And, and then what's really interesting about that is that I've come around to see I'm the door closer. And, I think that that's what we need to see. There's the opportunity that our opposites, and maybe you can give me some commentary on how you and Kelsey are working through this. But I got to tell you today, when I see the medicine cabinet open, which inevitably it will be, particularly in the morning, I just walk right over and close it and say, I'm the closer. She's the opener. I'm the closer. How about you? Anything like that in your life?
It's funny because when I first was listening to that, I was like, man, I think I'm the closer too. But it was such a good, everyday occurrence of, what are things that, just seem to be happening where we are not on the same page. And I think it's probably more turning off lights than closing cabinets. But, that also is not just because of my wife. I also have 2 little kids, and, they turn on the light and then they leave the room because they're distracted on the next thing. And it used to bug me so much. Don't they know that those
lights cost money? Don't they know
the
meters running?
It used to bug me so much. And now I just kind of walk into a room and I might go, okay, but I turn off the light and I move on with my day. And it's like, okay, this is my responsibility, is I'm going to be, the energy czar for our house, or, whatever it's going to be. But it's part of it.
I'll tell you, I want to give you huge hope because, this is a really good example of rewiring the brain. It does take time. It's not going to be like an overnight experience. But I can totally see you, Brandon, at some point seeing a light is on and just be delighted. Just be delighted that you have the opportunity to turn it off and that you were there. I'm like, thank you, Jesus, I was here. And my, doors open don't really cost anything. I mean, it did when the, refrigerators didn't have beepers, but fortunately they do now. Yeah, that's pretty crazy. I love that. So let's get into this. Let's read the word and kind of go through it. Set the context. What is Jesus talking about? Remember, what we're doing is we're trying to abide. We're trying to follow him. He's given us instructions on what is truth. And we're still in Matthew, and we're in the Sermon on the Mount, and he's on his third, you have heard it said. So, he's in this lane of, you have heard it said. And where did they hear it? Commonly, it was in the Mosaic Law, where they'd heard it before. This one is in the Rabbinic Law. So let's read it. This is a Matthew 5:31-32 from the NIV. Jesus is saying, you have heard it said, anyone who divorces his wife must give her a certificate of divorce. So this was in the Rabbinic laws that were created. that you could actually give a certificate to your wife and then get a divorce. Jesus is clarifying this and saying, but I tell you that anyone who divorces his wife, except for sexual immorality, makes her the victim of adultery. And anyone who marries a divorced woman commits adultery. So, wow. So right off the bat, we're seeing that he's equating adultery into this. If you're going to get a divorce, here's the consequences. And it's not lost on me that, the other one is, you've heard it said, if you commit adultery, he's saying, but if you even think of a woman, you've committed adultery. So he's kind of in the same lane as adultery and equating divorce to that. And then it's kind of interesting that the law has this, hey, just give your wife a certificate and you're done. What are your reflections on Jesus rewiring the Jewish culture and saying, look, this is covenant, you can't break it?
Yeah, that's really what it is, right? It's the difference between a contract and a covenant. And I think right now there have been parts of my marriage, and even just my relationship before we were married, because we were together for about 7 years before we got married, between dating and being engaged. And so there were definitely parts of that relationship that I thought were very contractual, hey, I'm going to do this for you to show you I love you and you will love me in return, or vice versa. And I'm learning, I have learned, but I'm continuing to work through the iterations of saying, I need to always be loving my wife, and I need to know that I am always being loved by God and she is always being loved by God. And so if I want to be like God, I've got to love her the way that God loves me and the way that God loves her. And that is challenging at times. To be honest, it's really easy at times too, if I'm paying attention. And so I love the idea of having it as a covenant, because it's unbreakable at that point.
That's so cool. And yeah, that covenant picture, it's really interesting. Nancy and I, who are both divorced, when we got married, our vows were had the typical things, but they had added statements like, when things go south, when this falls apart, here's what I commit to doing. And I think that is really helpful, because the bottom line is, doesn't matter who you are. I have seen so many marriages, they have a valley, and maybe your valley is lower than most, but everyone has a valley. Some people have 7 valleys in their journey. There's always going to be a moment where the gravity is taking you down. You come against each other, and you need to have a plan. You need to have a strategy. Okay, so here's what we committed to. When this happens, here's what we're going to double down on. And it's really cool because, I just got to marry my son, Jedediah, and I was able to counsel him and Martina on some of these vows, and just hearing them again, here's what we're going to do when things don't go well.
So, and I think, I was fortunate enough to be able to actually write most of our whole marriage ceremony. We worked with somebody that said, you can do whatever you want. I'm there because I've got the legal authority to do this, but whatever you want it to be, that's what it'll be. So, again, we had some of the typical, love passages and stuff like that from Ephesians and First Corinthians. I do love what it says in First Corinthians. Go back here. 1 Corinthians chapter 13, 4-7. Love is patient and kind. Love does not envy or boast. It is not arrogant or rude. It does not insist on its own way. It is not irritable or resentful. It does not rejoice at wrongdoing, but rejoices with the truth. Love bears all things, believes all things, hopes all things, endures all things. And sometimes if I am frustrated, I need to remember all of those things, because we vowed to do those things to each other or with each other as part of our marriage covenant. And so if I need to go back to anything, it's go back to what I said I was going to do. And by the way, that's what God says we're supposed to do anyway. That is what love is in his eyes. So
Totally. And I would just add, just because a lot of people don't think of it this way, is I would say all the words of Jesus are the behaviors of love. So, it's kind of like Paul is doing the short list plus, here's the result. And then Jesus is like, hey, here's where you have to get real dirty here if you want to love. And this is what love looks like. We're talking about grace as the operating system of love. And most of the words of Jesus have got this grace. Everything's laced with grace in how he loves people. So yeah, that's really, really super cool. You mentioned that it's a covenant, not a contract. And I think it's important for people to, for us to kind of go a little deeper on that, because you were saying is in a contract, the contract is designed for when things go badly, here's how we're going to end the relationship. Usually a contract is focused on, like if somebody wanted what do they call them? Prenuptial agreement. What if it fails, here's what we're going to do. And that is the marriage understanding.
It's giving you your outs, right? And I see it in the business world all the time. Hey, we're agreeing to do this scope of work in this timeline under these conditions. And if the conditions aren't met or the work isn't done in the right, time frame or whatever, then we're going to do X. And a lot of times it's terminate the contract. And I do think a lot of people enter marriage assuming that it's that, not necessarily with malintent or, I'm looking for my out. I think if you were looking for your out, you wouldn't get married in the first place. But,
there you go.
I think they also think of it as, well, yeah, if things go bad, I know things are going to go bad, but if they go really bad, like worse than I was anticipating, I've got my out. And, in today's day and age, I'm just like 50% of everybody else, it's not that big a deal. And I think it's shifting your heart to say, no, it is that big a deal. And if you want to be with this person forever in this lifetime, which is what you should be agreeing to, then yeah, you're going to have to ride that wave, and there will be awesome ups and you enjoy those while they're there, but there are going to be some valleys, and you're going to have to work through that. And some of that is you just got to work together through that. It's ownership, taking ownership of your own faults. It's pointing out some of the deficiencies that you might see in your spouse, but not doing that in a negative light. And that's, I think, what Kelsey and I are working through right now is we're learning how to help direct each other into being better versions of ourselves that are being better lovers to each other, not in the eros, form of lovers. That might be a byproduct, but it's in that brotherly love, the, I think it's phileo love of saying, I'm here to love you more. And in doing that, I know you're going to love me more too, because I'm going to be more lovable.
So cool. Yeah, I love that. That's such a good perspective, and that's so healthy. And, interesting, Brandon, because 100X Life is, I'm hoping becomes a movement, and we have Jesus followers galore, people who are really live his words. We could easily, under the banner of 100X Life, have 100X marriage. What is 100X marriage? Yeah. The reason I'm saying that is because if you take the lens of Jesus in his 100X process of growth, when the marriage goes south, that is our gymnasium moment to actually accelerate, to actually get better, to actually stay in the gym, to experience some pain, work through that pain, and come on the other side with bigger muscles, bigger capability, and to put that into the, what it really means is a more intentional way to love her, another more intentional way to love him, more authentic love. So I think that that's really important. And I'm, as you're saying that, I'm hearing you say, that, through the lens of 100X life, this is a gym experience. And how much better can we navigate if we think that's the way, what's going on?
Absolutely. And I mean, it is a gym experience. There are things that I am working on that I'm like, I have not worked this muscle in a long time. And so just a couple of reps and I'm feeling it, right? But at the same time, I'm learning that one of the easiest ways for me to know how Kelsey's actually feeling is to ask her. So, hey, what do you feel about this? What is on your mind? We've been doing more praying together lately in the last handful of weeks, and it's awesome because I know what's on her heart more than just, hey, I need a break from the girls because they're running around and screaming their heads off and you've been at work, so you haven't heard that for the last 6 hours, but you're home, so now it's time for you to jump in and let me have 15 minutes of peace and quiet. It's like, okay, so that's cool, and that's very surface level, but after the girls have gone to bed and we're just sitting there, just she and I, how are we able to take that conversation to the next level and say, okay, like what's really on your heart? And it could be, still something that is just, hey, there's a bunch of little things that all just add up and I'm a little overwhelmed, or no, I've got this big thing that I'm dealing with and, I can't shake it. And it gives me an opportunity to be there as a supporter, as a confidant, as a, prayer warrior, as a, whatever I need to be for her in that moment. She's letting me in, and that's because she trusts me, right? Again, we've been together now almost 17 years. Like there's a level of trust that's built over that duration of time. We've done a lot of life together. And so I think that's helpful to do it that way. And I think really it's just comes down to how open are you willing to be with this person? And hopefully that openness is growing every moment that you're together, because you are building that trust on that relationship.
Wow, that's really helpful. I think that's going to be helpful for people. And then all through the lens of this is a covenant, so we're in it. We're in it to win it. We're not in it to fail. And you actually, just in saying the way you were saying that, man, I had another thought, and I've never had this thought, but I'm going to go there. And the first one I'm going to say is the one I've had before. And I want to read from Mark, because Mark also records Jesus' words on this issue. And what's interesting about Mark was written before Matthew. So here it is. This is Mark 10:2. Some Pharisees came and tested Jesus by asking, "Is it lawful for a man to divorce his wife?" They're trying to trap him, and he says, "Well, what did Moses command you?" And they said, "Moses permitted a man to write a certificate of divorce and send her away." So we're talking about the exact same thing from the law that was recorded. And then Jesus says, "It is because your hearts were hard that Moses wrote you this law. But at the beginning of creation, God made them male and female. For this reason, a man will leave his father and his mother and be united with his wife, and the two will become one flesh. So they are no longer two, but one flesh. Therefore, what God has joined together, let no one separate." And then he does the conclusions. He says, anyone who answered divorces his wife and marries another woman commits adultery against her. And if she divorces her husband and marries another man, she commits adultery. So those are very similar to the words in Matthew. And here's, Brandon, do you see what's missing from the Mark version versus the Matthew version?
I mean, I think you should spell it out. However, I feel like he almost eliminated some of the context. He added more information in there that I think is kind of more overarching, but he eliminated some of initial context that you see from Matthew. And but I mean, reading that Mark version, it's like, okay, I'm feeling like, yep, okay, keep bringing it on. It goes deeper.
It almost defines what a covenant is, because we're not dealing with two people anymore. We're dealing with one person. And how would you? It's like water and tea. Like, how do you separate that? You're saying you can't. But another point is really cool that we get these perspectives from various people who are recording what Jesus is doing. So that's really cool. It shapes kind of what you were saying. So here's the glaring omission: is Jesus in Mark version does not say except for adultery. And so, excuse me, this is just my belief. I'm sorry to offend. If people are listening, they're really offended by this. This is just what I believe, because I'm a man, and I know what a man thinks when his woman commits adultery. And, and Matthew doesn't say if you commit adultery, the women can leave you. It's just one-sided. And I just think when that was copied, some guy just said, man, this is the reason where we're not going to stay. And I just think that's wrong. And I think the proof, I'll give you two proofs for that. One is in the Mark version and the analogy of one flesh. Even if you slept with another woman, or a woman slept with another man, you're still one flesh with the other person. And then the other argument I'll give you is that Jesus just equated lust with adultery. How many men who are married have lusted? Are you telling me, or women who have lusted, do you telling me we now all have a right to divorce? I think not. Any thoughts on that? I know I'm blowing some minds right here, and they're like, Rob, you've gone too far. But Brandon, what are your thoughts?
I think you bring up a good point in that whenever there's multiple accounts of a story, you hope that there are enough pieces overlapping that you get the full story. I think that it's interesting that he does not talk about sexual immorality. That Mark does not talk about sexual immorality. And I think that, like you said, it goes to show that when you are joined together as one flesh, you're supposed to leave and cleave, like leave your parents, cleave to your spouse. And so at that point, I don't really care who did the adultery. It's not good for either party. And I think it hurts just as bad, regardless of if you're a man or a woman, because just the thought of, you could go down the whole spiral of, am I not good enough? Am I, what's wrong about me, to make them want to even attempt to do something with somebody else. But I think the whole point of that is, you got to love your spouse enough that, all they want is you. You mentioned, I think on yesterday's podcast, about how, you only have eyes for Nancy, and that's awesome. And it's like, right now, I only have eyes for Kelsey.
Come on.
I don't want that to change. I don't. I love her, and I think she's beautiful, and I don't care if the crazy hair that she's got gets all over the place because, she's chasing two toddlers around. Like, you know what? You're still beautiful in my eyes. You're the one I want. And, there's no even questioning that.
That is so cool. And that's also a really good strategy, starving your eyes for everyone else but your babe. And then I will say too, like, I love what you're saying about really indulging in seeing her as beautiful. I think the more I admire her and practice admiring her, it's like an exponential increase of my unconscious mind being bedazzled by the beauty. It's almost like I'm training my unconscious mind to really, really think she is the most beautiful woman in the world. And just to get real, like, it's really hard for us in the bathroom when she's naked because I'm so now hardwired to her. It's like, she's like, okay, calm down, Rob. Okay, let me put on a towel. And I know this is going to be, that. And then they have another problem is you can't stay away from her because you're like, look, you're my only woman. You're the only thing. And man, this is my point is that it just gets more exciting. All the things that Jesus designed marriage and sex for get more exciting when we walk in the covenant in a clean way. We protect our eyes and our desires for only her. And I'll say for the women who are listening to the podcast, for only him. And if you have a man like me, give him your love language. Mine is words of affirmation. Nancy's learning this, and she'll just come up to me and she'll just say, I'm so proud of you. You're so amazing. And I kind of know what's going on. I'm like, man, thank you for loving me. Thank you so much. Tell me a little bit about, you can commentary on that, or also tell me some of the challenges you're having. Like what is the wrestling match and what are your practices to double down on the covenant? See, Kelsey is like perfect, beautiful. You said that. What's your strategy?
Yeah. So one quick comment on what you were saying before is, learning and understanding Kelsey's love language is really important because she and I have different love languages, which again, opposites attract. And so that's not uncommon by any means. And my love languages my top two are physical touch and quality time. And her top two are words of affirmation and acts of service. And so it's like, there's no overlap on those, And so what do I have to do to show her I love her is I have to give her words of affirmation and I have to give her acts of service. And those can be very difficult for me, but I'm finding that the more that I do those things, the more that I get the quality time and the physical touch. And it's a response because she feels loved. And so she's going to return that love. And, she might return the love still in words of affirmation and acts of service because that's her natural inclination. But when she sees that I'm going out of my natural inclination to give her words of her love language, she goes out of her natural inclination to give me my love language. And I think that that's a building cycle that just helps us get deeper. So, kind of jumping forward to your question about the covenant,
well, here's what I call what you just said. Giving her her love language is foreplay in marriage.
Absolutely.
That's what foreplay is in marriage. It's like, just give them their love language. I'm like, I don't even get it. Like I did acts of service for you, Nancy, and all of a sudden you're like, snuggly. Like, what is going on?
Yeah, no, it's like, hey, let's get those girls to bed early tonight, like you did all the dishes and left me a nice note and you did all this stuff and, or I mean, to be honest, it's like, hey, you came home and without me even asking, you just jumped in and like took over so that I could go take my break or I could, do whatever. And it's honestly, it's when I do something without her asking, that is really how she knows that I'm trying to love her. And so, yeah, I mean, it's a learning game. You asked about what are some of the struggles we've had. Like if I am becoming a little bit selfish and saying, well, I'm only going to love you the way that I know how to love myself, that comes naturally, like it's not going to do much for her. And we've had those cycles where, there's the book Love and Respect. We've been in the crazy cycle numerous times, where I'm not giving her the love that she desires and she's not giving me the respect that I desire. And we're going around and around in circles until somebody finally says like, hey, this is silly. Like we got to stop this. And, as soon as somebody breaks the cycle, it's pretty quick that we can jump out of it and, get back in a good cycle. But, yeah, I mean, it happens. And, I think we were just talking about this last week. some of the things that I love most about Kelsey and that drew me to her creativity, her design sense, her just love of nature and all these different things are oftentimes some of the same things that frustrate me in our marriage, because I'm like, can we just finish a freaking project? Like, you've already bounced off to the next 4 things because you are so creative, and I just want to finish something. And
That is so true.
it's one of those things I really have to, I mean, I have to sit down and say, listen, I'm not going to change her, and I love her creativity. And so how am I going to redirect to say, okay, before we start the next project, I need you to help me finish this one, because that is what allows me to feel the love. And then while I'm enjoying this new space we've created, you can be off designing the next one, and we'll do that one next. But I mean, yeah, sometimes it's like, hey, you know, the things I love most about you, or the things that draw me to you the most, can be the source of some of our biggest conflict. And, you know, you just got to work through it.
That's absolutely brilliant, because that's exactly right. And I'm hoping people who are listening are like, yes, the thing I was attracted to has become my frustration. And why were you attracted to it? Because you don't have it, and you're kind of enamored, and you need it. Like, you need creativity in your life, and you didn't have it. So like, man, she's amazing. And then we have to manage our problem solving. And I think that's really good to talk about it for marriages. If you haven't done Working Genius is an assessment online. It's probably workinggenius.com, but I don't know. But you can look it up. You can Google that. Is that it's an assessment that teaches us how we address a problem. And what you're saying is she is the person who's addressing it by creating, okay, here's another problem we're going to solve. And you're at the tail end going, I just want to finish the one we have. And so we have to actually pull on each other and ask each other to for the thing we need, so that we get the rights to say later, hey, can you turn down the volume on your creativity? So, for example, you might think, oh, here's something I really need creativity on, and then go to Kelsey and say, hey, Kelsey, I really need your creativity right now. Can we sit down and talk about this? Because I need you. When we do that in marriage, when we do this on teams, but when we do this in marriage, it feels so good to be understood with the superpowers we have, and actually have someone pulling on them and wanting who we are. And that positions us for when the opposite comes and it becomes a frustration, we can have a better conversation because there's more trust about, hey, totally appreciate your creativity right now. I'm a little overloaded trying to figure out the last thing that we did. So can we talk about this maybe in a couple days? Give me some space. Then that's going to be honored. Does that sound like what's happening with you guys?
Very much so. And I was just looking at my top 5 strengths, and I've got consistency, discipline, maximizer, self-assurance, and focus. It's like consistency, discipline, and focus. Those 3 are like, yeah, we got to finish this job before we jump into the next one. But none of those are in Kelsey's top 5. She's got empathy, and she's got all these other things that I don't have. And I don't know where empathy is for me, but it's probably closer to my bottom 5. And so, it's like, okay, I've got to learn how to do some of these things and work together. But I love your thought on like saying, hey, yeah, I need your creativity right now to help me focus and to help me have that discipline. I'll use my focus and discipline and consistency to, use my strengths, accompany those with her strengths. And I mean, at that point, we're going to be a driving force. Nobody's going to stop us.
So good. I love that. And then I don't want to miss the part as we're getting closer to the end of the podcast. I don't want to miss the turnoff for, Paul's advice in Ephesians 5:25 through 33. I think it's super rich. I think every man really needs to look at it closely, because what Paul is saying is that you are Jesus to your wife. You are to be just as Jesus was to the church. You are to be with her. And I'm going to double down on even if she commits adultery, you're going to be, what does it mean to be Jesus to our wives? It means that we come with forgiveness. We come with grace. We come with a love that is bigger than hers. Hopefully it's like, even in the face of these frustrating things, you're just kind of smiling and going, oh man, I love you. Which drives Nancy crazy when we're in the middle of an argument. I'm like, I love you. But that is real. It's like, I'm going to die for you. I'm all in. I've burned the ships. There's no going back. You are it. You're the one of my focus. You're the one I'm serving. All really, really cool.
So, I mean, you wrote in your book here, the ongoing forgiveness of your spouses is a privilege and an opportunity she was given to you to care for and invest in. And I think that that's 100% correct. And it's not lost on me that the first podcast I sat down with you on was Do Not Judge. And, it's right in that trifecta with forgiveness and, forgiveness, do not judge, and don't divorce. I mean, they are very much aligned. And so, yeah, I mean, I think it's really important that I have to constantly be reminding myself of this, but yeah, might be frustrated by something, but I'm doing my best to not judge her for that. And I'm definitely not going to just divorce her because she did one thing. I mean, I feel like divorce is such an extreme. Maybe not these days and in these times, but for me in my heart, like a lot has to happen to get to that stage. And I think that there are so many on-ramps for Jesus to kind of come and influence that. And I think there are plenty of off-ramps for us to say, hey, whatever this road is that we're on, like we're going to take a detour because this isn't headed the way that we want to go. So let's take a side road, take it easy, and figure out how we can regroup, recalculating as the GPS would say.
Yeah. So recalculating, wrong turn, recalculating. Exactly. The Jesus following finder. Hey, so that's really, really good. Let's talk about these 100X lifestyle. This is how you would know you're living this. So the first one is, and I actually really love this because it's just so can't get out of it. You see marriage as a covenant for which you will die, even if your spouse breaks it.
I think that's something I'm still, I mean, those words are true, but they are difficult, right? And so I think it's something that I'm still working through. I'm definitely resisting, in your gym here, I'm resisting. I want to say that I'm refocusing, but I think it's fair to say that I'm resisting right now. And I would love to be able to get to a point that says, yeah, no, I'm going to die for my spouse. But that's also a scary thought. Like, really, I'm going to die for her? Like, that's a lot. And the more that we work through things together, the closer that we get bonded in our relationship with each other and with God, the easier that becomes, because it's like, yeah, no, I mean, I will see you in heaven, and we will be able to reconnect and just love each other the way that I'm loving everybody else in heaven. And I don't know, I look forward to being able to say, oh, that is 100% like I am in it, because I think it's a good thing to strive to.
So good. Okay. Second one, you see your spouse as an opportunity to sacrifice your own interests, allowing you to follow Jesus.
And again, I am right in the middle of that. I think this 100X life challenge is all about giving your mind and spirit authority over your body. And whatever we're learning in that with some of the, physical exercises and what we're eating or not eating, and, hey, making sure that we're being disciplined enough to journal and do all these things, like that is just allowing me, growing in me, an ability to say, hey, this is what I want right now, but this is what she needs right now. And in order for me to give her that, I might have to sacrifice what I'm doing for myself or what sounds good to me. And so, it goes well beyond some of the essentially basic aspects of this challenge, but I think this is a great starting point.
It's interesting when you talk about what I hear you say is that the challenge is building the stay married muscle.
Mm-hmm. Absolutely.
Isn't that how it is? Like, it's so funny how this muscle, this anti-sin muscle, can be exercised without divorce in front of us. Like, maybe we haven't come to divorce, but we've gotten so accustomed to overcoming our body, then when we get to a divorce off ramp, we don't take it. We stay in the game, because at the end of the day, the things that want to make us get a divorce are all have to do with our bodies screaming, this is unfair, this is not right, I'm being wrong, I'm getting gypped, I'm feeling hurt, and the body just wants to give up. And as you say, the mind and the spirit need to be strong. So I think even those people, and probably the most people listening to this are dealing with, in the middle of a divorce. Maybe some are, bless you. If you are, we will make a way out of it in Jesus' name. But the bottom line is we can work out for that moment. We can work to follow Jesus and deny our body for that moment when it is going to count.
Yeah, absolutely. And, I think we are blessed to have other people around us, friends and family, that have told us, hey, we believe in your marriage. And so, we're going to do whatever we can to support you and encourage you, or watch your children while you're in this, couple hours a week, marriage course, whatever. Like, and that's not lost on me either, that we are in here saying, hey, all of these people that have nothing to do with our marriage believe in our marriage. Why can't we believe in our marriage? So I think that that's awesome. Again, we're super blessed to have that. I know not everybody has those communities, but I think it's also really important to find those people that can speak positively into your life, because that's necessary for everything outside of marriage too. It's just, hey,
we need people in our lives. We need community. And then if you're a community member, seeing that a couple is struggling, don't wait till they tell you they're getting a divorce. Move in.
Right.
Give them the encouragement. If you're a couple, hey, we'd like to meet with you, and just do life together. And then, because whenever that happens with Nancy and me, we, and maybe we're good at this, but we're just raw. Like we don't hold anything back in front of other people, and they can see us working it out in real time. And mentorship in community is so needed as the body of Christ. This is what the body of Christ does. One member of the body is hurting, the other body parts come and assist. So I love that point. I'll just say one other thing about divorce that when we haven't talked about this, but the most tragic thing is the kids. And there's so much evidence and science research that shows that they're on the road to destruction if you get a divorce. And so let that be another reason why we're going to stay in the game, and we're going to work this out. We're going to show our kids what they need to do when they're married, because they're going to be in the exact situation we're in. And I got to tell you, the thing that the kids hated when they were kids, they hated Nancy and I talking about this. We said, hey, kids, just so you know, mom and dad, we're committed to one another. We love you. You're important, but mom comes first. Dad comes first. And they hated that. And now that they're married, they say that's the most important thing that we did for their marriage, was to act that out, because now they get it. They understand what covenant is. They understand the challenges, and they understand why being committed is going to save the day in those difficult times. Any last thoughts, Brandon?
I think, again, we're in this class, and I recognize some people, and I'm like, man, I kind of assumed you had all your stuff together, like you seem to put on a good face, in the public, and you're in this class, which means things aren't all that great. And so I think it's really, I say that as more as an encouragement of like, if you're struggling, you got to find that community that you can reach out to, even if it's, a couple of people, either another close couple, or, for a guy, a couple of buddies, or for a gal, a couple of girlfriends that you can reach out to and tell them about what's going on. Because I feel like in today's day and age, everybody puts only their best stuff out on social media, and, they like make everything out to seem so much better than the reality. And so I would encourage you, if you are having trouble, to make sure that you find the community that you can talk to, but also just understand, like, by you being vulnerable and sharing something that's not going on great in your own marriage, you might be opening up a door for somebody to talk about something that's not going on great in their marriage. And you might end up being somebody that can help them way more than you even realized. And so I would just encourage everybody to understand that, it's okay to be vulnerable, and B, again, kind of circling back to do not judge. Like I entered this course thinking everything was good by everybody else that I was kind of knew in this community, this one community. And I'm like, you know what? We all have our own stuff. And so I'm trying extra to love on that couple specifically even more, because, again, they need some hope in their own marriage to say, yeah, no, like, we're not going to get divorced. We're going to work through it. So that's my encouragement to everybody.
To end on. And, I'll just summarize that is that, hey, more people are in the same boat as you than stakes are really high. We need to double down on marriage. We need to double down on supporting those who are in marriage. Thank you so much, Brandon. It's been really rich. I really enjoyed the conversation. And 100X Lifers, we will see you tomorrow.
Thanks, guys.
If you believe in the 100X Life movement, please follow and invite a friend by sharing this podcast. The 100X Life movement could also be found on Instagram and Facebook, and also at 100xlife.com. The 100X Life podcast was produced by Jenna D of Jenna D Services, with music by Ryan Ellis.
Lost, but you found me here, and your fire burns inside. It will not disappear, because the